I want to know how you're doing in the rest of it. My question to you is, if everyone is now looking at it, how did you deal with the issue that contractors are laggards? How do you get them to understand just what it is, the product that you're creating?
So I would say that, and I'm kind of proud to say this, right, is upfront when we started with the beta, definitely more difficult because it wasn't a refined product, right? We were building something on the side as a side hustle, mind you, as well, right? Today, it's so easy to use, meaning if a contractor, if a person is using a cell phone, is creating a proposal on their computer, using Jet is easier. Why is it easier? Because it has a template for all of the things that you need, all of the functions that you're already anyways doing in a different way, in a scattered, inorganized way. And now you have a platform to just assist you through that process. I
think also, just so the audience knows, literally I went to construction school, and one of the classes is like, make your own submittal, right? Like literally, right. What do you want to see on it? So you're like just saying, I could literally just standardize it and put it on. And I'm telling you, like, people are probably like, what? You're like, that is an innovation, right? Sometimes being like, people think it's like you've changed the world. How about just doing like what's most efficient and then in a central location is changing the world?
Right. Exactly.
So then, so now you create this product, but again, how was the translation? You're saying it was so intuitive, so all you really needed was to show people how it was working, and all of a sudden you started picking up traction on it?
Yeah, exactly. So, I'll say yes and no, right? So in the beginning, I'll say called 2019 or so, we had a nice product that was ready to explore with external parties. So we onboarded a design client through our network, so a New York-based developer as well. So they started using our product to kind of test it and leverage it for their own case. With them, we built for I'll call it the next year from 2019. So until 2020, we refined it further. We built more features based on their feedback, based on our own, feedback and use cases. And then we, as an end result, came to the product that it is today. That, I mean, granted, we are always refining and always adding.
Yeah, software business is a constant refinement.
Right, correct. But around 2020, mid 2020 or so, really a refined product that, to answer your question, yeah, you go on it, you see the word submittals, it walks you through the process of how to upload a submittal, what information would be relevant. Boom, you're done. Scheduling. Wildly easy to create a Gantt chart schedule with dependencies. If you have changes to it, wildly easy to just create those changes.
So for the more sophisticated people that are watching, there are competitors in the space, right? And I believe that those competitors have been valued, valued very high, right? And you're breaking in now. So what was the difference between you and sort of some of these competitors that are out there?
Yeah, absolutely. So we actually, myself and Joseph, actually tried to onboard at the time. So pre-Jet at the time.
Right, because you're a young man, technology. You knew, like, if there's a product, let's try.
Exactly, yeah. And we came across a few frictions, right? One being price point. Price point was wildly high.
Well, they were the only one, right? They had a monopoly, basically?
Well, yeah, I'll call it basically. I believe that other legacy platforms also existed, as they do still today. And I'll touch on the other friction points, which ties those together, which is the platform itself, right? We spoke about user adoption as it relates to people that are not necessarily tech savvy. I couldn't understand those products, right? I look at those products and I don't know what to do or where to go on the platform itself.
The architect, which I find, by the way, super fascinating. People probably think, oh, the technology exists, they must be the winner. The reality is, when the architecture, like how you've actually designed it, is it intuitive? You can win. Like literally just making it the user experience, which now people are understanding is so important, because you see these apps, or I always like to compare it to banking apps. There's some banking apps that you're like, I'm switching banks because this is just dope. This is simple. It's easy. There's other ones that have been banks forever, but they're not willing to change. So the idea that just the architecture of the way that you use it could be a winner, right?
Yeah, that's a great comparison with banking apps. Yeah, exactly. So just the architecture, right? So it's kind of that classic, some companies were first to market, and then the other company, i.e. Jet, understood the I guess lack of features or lack of UI UX experience, user interface and user experience that existed.
Is that what UX is? User experience? All right, I was making sure. You're talking to old school contractor guy here. Okay, so now what were the other things that were so different? All right, so I got the architecture. You said price point was ridiculous. I don't know how they're pricing it, but like, okay, you need people to use it,
Right. So in addition, I want to tag something to the price point where these other companies will typically ask for your financial information to create a percentage off of your books to price the product. So that was also a friction point that we weren't able to use their product, right? Onboard their product with our companies that we're working for.
So let me give my audience an example. This is my genius. So back in the day, every time I retained an architect, right? My father was an architect. You go to the architect, right? You go, here's 50,000 square foot building, 100,000 square foot building. How would you like to price it, right? And the architects I always use were like, oh, that's great. The amount of work it will be X, Y, Z. You know, the amount of staff I need, and they're pricing your project, right? The other architects, the architects that you were like, and they could never prove it, like why you would make more money or not, would say, well, what do you think the hard costs are? And you're like, what do you matter what the hard costs are? And hard costs meaning construction costs. They're like, well, is it going to be 20 million or is it going to be 10 million? You're like, I don't know. I need the design first. They'd be like, well, we're going to charge you based on your hard costs. And I always felt like that was a conflict of interest. Like, what do you mean? What about if I spend more, I spend less? Like, why would your value be pegged to the hard cost, which is what you're saying is the way in which these, like, it never even made sense to me. I'd never work with them, right? It's like, no, I want you to look at your job and what, for your love and for you to get it done, what you would want to charge. What does that have to do with how much I spent?
Right.
So I agree with you. I don't even think I could ever call, I wouldn't even speak to that company is my point.
I agree. I couldn't understand it myself. So, you know, with all those elements, all those friction points that existed, we said, you know, screw it. This isn't going to work. The companies that we proposed it to that we were working for at the time also said, no way, get out of here. And, you know, here we are now with Jet.
So how is it going? Tell us, like, in the marketplace, what's the deal?
Yeah. Absolutely.
How much have you raised? If you want to shout out any of the people that gave you capital, and like, where are you at today?
Absolutely. Yeah. So we did very, very recently did a pre-seed round. We leading with Shadow Ventures, as our VC, guys in Atlanta.
Atlanta. Nice.
Atlanta. Amazing team, amazingly supportive. We also have Annex on board. Super happy about that. What we're doing in the market right now is kind of creating awareness, creating growth, onboarding more clients. Been an amazing experience speaking to these larger enterprise companies, so companies that are doing, you know, global 50 billion in construction value, who have dedicated innovation arms to their companies, and they're looking for products like Jet to implement through their business.
And have you locked any of those up where they're doing projects over either multiple states or just multiple projects?
So we're in the sales cycle. I mean, this is all very, very new, right? So
don't worry, this isn't coming out for like 6 weeks. So that's fine. You probably locked them all up.
So exactly, yeah. Hopefully by then, yeah. So I mean, for context, Joseph and I jumped on full time in July.
Oh wow!
And started these conversations with the firms that I just referenced. I don't know, in the past month or so.
And they have that beef with those old companies, right?
They're
have like
major beef. It's always I mean, for me, I think it's funny. It's funny feedback to hear from them, the aggravations that they have with these legacy companies and the inflexibility that those companies have as a solution for these, you know, enterprise global firms.
So right now you're in talks in this sales cycle to lock up some of these larger firms, and you're talking about being full-time since July, and it's October.
Correct.
Like, sounds to me like the market is starving right now for what you're providing, which is really cool. All right. So where are you guys located? What's your story? Where are you guys at?
New York City based, but we, you know, being a software company, have access to, you know, everywhere in the world, global. And you
got that international flavor. You were out in the Middle East for a while, so, you know, you'll travel anywhere.
Exactly.
You know, so I have a question for you. My biggest issue back in the day with a lot of the companies that were looking at solving for what you are, because I want the audience to know, it was all server based, right? Like, I think a lot of people don't understand technology, just in order to do what you're doing, is changing so fast, which gave you the capability of sort of being able to do this cloud-based system where you can actually all log in from everywhere. One of the biggest things I always thought was, though, what information are you learning and how are you what are you thinking about when it comes to